Brought to you by JMR Rentals, jmrny.com. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend. I'm Jason Godbey, and today on the program, we're taking a look at some of the films from this year's Brooklyn Film Festival. And to help me do that, joining me via Zoom, it's No Rest for the Weekend's own Maribeth Thueson and our favorite Hollywood film critic from actuallypaid.com, Mr. William Hammon. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Jason. Nice to be here.
Good to be back.
So, of course, we're going to have more from the Brooklyn Film Festival, but I wanted to do, as we usually do, a quick review of the films. And Bill's an animation nut, so he assisted on talking about the animated program because one of the animated films got nominated for an Oscar last year.
Yep, last year's winner, My Year of Dicks, at the Brooklyn Film Festival, made it all the way to Oscar night and arguably should have won. So don't count anything out.
I think it's hard for Oscar to nominate anything with the word "dicks" in the title.
We at least got a fun read on the telecast.
So we got a few films to hear some highlights: the opening night, the closing night, a couple in the middle. We're going to start with the opening night feature, which is called "Forgive Me, Father." So, Bill, what did you think of this one?
This is very much a small film. It's very deeply intimate and personal. James Godbey, who stars in the film, he also wrote and directed. He's had a steady career in TV and film, particularly in crime procedurals. So he's kind of well versed in how these stories are told. It's basically he's a grown up ex-con who was abused by a priest as a child, like so many, not just in this country but throughout the world. He's out of prison. He's, going back to his friends. He's, casually trash talking each other. Like there's a kind of lived in feel to it. And then running into the priest, now elderly, but still alive, literally and figuratively triggers him. He decides he wants to turn himself into this avenging angel and take out people who have either been convicted of sex crimes or who are suspected of them, especially as it relates to children. Then you have his next door neighbor, Melinda, played by Hannah Lauer, who has been kind of down in the dumps with her life to this point. She's gotten mixed up with drugs and the sex trade and everything like that, but she's trying to extricate herself and get a more straightforward life going forward. Helping her grandmother with her meds, taking nursing classes, that sort of thing. But her former boss, for the cleanest term I can use, keeps harassing her. So yeah, it's kind of like a choice in Daniel's mind. Do I find my salvation through this girl who I can help? Do I take out criminals who, yes, it's a crime to kill them, but who's going to miss them? And where does he balance that kind of thing? My personal favorite aspect of the film, he has these recurring nightmares of his abuse that are painted in very stark, graphic terms, but not like the literal abuse. Like there's a scene where he's on a beach and the priest drowns him. Another one where he's hung by a noose in the woods. I'm guessing that's not what actually happened to him as a kid, but that's what his abuse felt like. It's very visceral and intense, and the actor who plays the priest ends every nightmare sequence by turning his head and looking directly at camera just to spook the crap out of you. It's a really nice touch.
And he is scary, I have to say.
Yeah, this movie was not a laugh riot. This kind of felt to me like a little bit about, it was sort of like late 80s, early 90s Jim Jarmusch meets like a Scorsese type vibe. Maribeth, what did you think of it?
Well, I was impressed by the lead actor, writer, director, James Godbey. As he played this character, Daniel, he's a decent guy. He's kind. He's respectful to women. he's really trying to live a good life now that he's out of prison. And then all of a sudden he decides to become this avenging angel And so the question is, well, does that make him a monster now? Because he's still good and kind. He's still protecting his neighbor. Um, or does that make him righteous in some way, to be dispensing justice when society and the criminal justice system is not dispensing justice, apparently? And what does that do to his soul? Does it make him a bad person now? Can you be decent and bad at the same time? I like the way the movie played with those types of questions, and the way he played the character. He played him as very kind of calm and deliberate, and he wasn't none of everything he did was thought out. It wasn't off the cuff at all. The only times that happened was when he had those emotional triggers from the priest, when he had a full out panic attack. So I thought his performance and the questions that the film raises were pretty interesting.
There's some real veteran New York actors in this thing. Aida Turturro has like a little cameo in it, and Anthony Robert Grasso is in it. He's been on the show before. That's going to be the opening night. Bill, you wanted to talk about the animated program. There's a lot of films in there. We can't talk about them all, obviously, but you found some highlights.
Oh, definitely. And this is one of my favorite events every single year, because there's just such a wide variety of stories and art styles to go around. Couple of noteworthy ones here. Frontline nurses, dispatches from the COVID-19 pandemic. As you can tell, it's a comedy. We're just coming out of the pandemic. The federal emergency is officially over as far as the government's concerned, but this is still a very raw, very real part of people's lives, either in recent memory or in their current existence. And the film industry is very slowly trying to figure out how to tell those stories. This particular film, which was directed by, excuse me, by Cynthia and Alexander White, basically just takes interview audio from actual nurses who had to work during the worst stages when the pandemic first hit and people were dying left and right, and they animate reenactments around them, and it's just heartbreaking to watch, but it's important. It's crucial that we kind of see and hear for ourselves what these people experience, how they came out the other side, and how they're still coping with it, years later. This is a disease that killed eventually 1 million Americans. It's insane that we as a society had to go through that. And the empathy and care with which these people show the stark reality in an unreal format was kind of striking to me. On the complete flip side of that, you have hot dogs. You want to talk about a New York film? This is a New York film. It's directed by a man named Frank Volk, and literally it starts out as just this goofy, kind of almost rough scribble sketch sales pitch from a hot dog vendor with a very thick Brooklyn accent, and he's saying stupid, silly, fun things like, "Oh, the hot dog costs $1.99, sales tax is $2.99." It's just like a guy like carnival barking on the street selling hot dogs. But then, just when you're just kind of shaking your head and giggling, he kind of flips the script on you and then goes into these anecdotes that turn into this weird existential treatise on how you deal with human interactions, how you cope with loss and union busting and suicide and all these very heavy themes, all coming back to like a crisis of faith about, basically, is he wasting his life selling hot dogs? I was amazed and surprised at how well such an offhanded topic could be translated in a way that makes complete sense and actually makes you think. Again, the main character, he looks like Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but an even rougher sketch version of him, and yet he's talking to you in a way that you would never expect, but you appreciate it all the same. That's why I love this animation program, like, because you could never know exactly what to expect. But my absolute favorite is a film called Tomato Kitchen by a man named Junyi Chao, a Chinese artist. He's got quite an impressive resume. He works on Love, Death, and Robots. He's been nominated for 2 Annie Awards. He's been featured twice at the Annecy Film Festival. And this very short won the animation program at the Phoenix Film Festival earlier this year. What it's about is just a man going to a restaurant that basically exclusively serves tomato products, which kind of goofy, but whatever. But then he notices the chef chasing down a living sentient tomato person. He goes back in the kitchen and sees all these tomato people in cages being tortured. There's this weird, surreal horror to this. All the angles in the shots, like windows, they're just slightly askew, tilted to one side or the other, just to keep cluing you in that nothing here is normal. And it ends up asking these really deep, profound questions about, cruelty to animals, public eating habits, the fact that some Asian cultures still eat dog meat because maybe these tomato people are almost like pets, even though they are almost fully fledged anthropomorphic beings. There's a really beautifully grotesque scene where the theme of assimilation into a mass culture becomes prevalent again through this completely bonkers setup of sentient tomatoes being used in a restaurant. I was I watched this short 3 times in a row because I just wanted to see what else could I pick up, what clues, trying to figure out what are the answers here. And of course the fact is there are no answers. There are only questions that we all need to ask ourselves when we're confronted with uncomfortable truths and how we respond to them and go forward with this new information. I was blown away by not just the story, but Junyi Shao's animation style. Again, the crooked angles, the use of bright reds for the tomatoes against dark blue backgrounds and shadows. It's expertly done. And again, we're a year off from My Year of Dicks going all the way to Oscar night. I think this has the potential to make it 2 in a row. Honestly, I was flabbergasted by how brilliant this was.
The first one sounds like a movie I'm probably not ready to see yet because I'm still having COVID flashbacks myself from living in the epicenter of an epicenter. The second one sounds like a guy I know. And the third one sounds like a vegan nightmare. It's...
I mean, that's these unanswerable questions that are open to so many interpretations. Maybe it is just kind of pushed back on the the PETA people of the world. Is oh, you want to talk about this? What if a tomato was tortured that way? It could be completely ironic for all we know. That's what is so brilliant about this. There's no right answer, except that everything you think about it feels right in the moment.
Thanks so much for doing that. You really delve into the animation stuff, and we'll definitely, come regroup come next year Oscar time and see where this one lands. Moving on though to the next film because we're going to run out of time. Pratfall. Maribeth, you want to tell us about this one?
It's a very simple kind of movie. In fact, I think of it as kind of the quintessential guerrilla-made movie because there's only 2 main characters. There's only a handful of supporting characters. The entire thing was shot with a really wobbly handheld camera on the streets mostly. You can tell it has almost no budget, but it's amazing what people can do under those circumstances to actually tell a story. And this story is the 2 characters, Eli. He starts out very angry, and you're not sure at first why. Maybe he's schizophrenic. He seems to talk to someone who's not there, but he sure is angry. Well, it turns out he's actually grieving. His mother has died and his girlfriend has died. And the girlfriend has died from a drug overdose, and he blames the drug dealer who sold her the drugs. So the drug dealer sells in Central Park. So he goes to Central Park and disrupts his business, talking to his prospective customers, kind of scaring them away. Drug dealer doesn't like that, warns them off, eventually tells them, he's going to get it if he doesn't stop it. The other character is a young French tourist who is stuck in the park with no money, and is kind of scared to leave. And eventually these two meet up. He's incredibly rude to her, but he seems like a lifeline because he's the only one who was talking to her. And so they pair up and she says, please show me the city. And so the rest of the film is them walking around the various neighborhoods of the city and getting to know each other a little bit, which is hard because this guy's a tough nut, you know. But eventually they do get to know each other. And you asked me earlier, does anything ever happen in this movie? And it takes a long time, I have to agree. The story unspools very slowly. And it's done in very tight close-ups of the characters. It feels very claustrophobic. And I wasn't sure I really liked that at first, but then I thought, well, you know, their lives are like that. Both of them are so self-involved. Their worlds are very small. Until they meet each other, and then their worlds start to expand a little bit. They start to relax with one another. The shell and the walls kind of come down. And it's 2 days and a sleepless night of them just walking around the city. Eventually, the drug dealer, who I have to say, he's a young guy, and he just doesn't look tough and menacing enough. But eventually the drug dealer comes back for his retribution, which sets up a kind of a surprise and nasty ending. But really the message of the film is we need each other. You know, even people who are odd or who have, you know, quirks, everyone needs to find someone else. Everyone needs friends.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see the whole thing. I got about halfway through it. And again, it did have that real like Jim Jarmusch, late 80s, early 90s, very kind of film schooly appeal to it. And I thought the performances were quite good. And it has to be, and they have to be, because that's what this movie is. It's the performances.
It's just the two of them together, yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to what's going to be the closing night film, Tales of Babylon. Bill, what can you tell us about that one?
Okay, so this is the one major exception to what you said earlier about a lot of these being very New York films, because this one's set in London. But I kind of like that this film, along with Forgive Me, Father, bookend the festival, because both of them kind of deal with similar themes, but on much different scales. Like, this is also a crime movie, but it's much larger. It's got a much more ensemble cast. The film is written and directed by Pelayo Delario and produced by his brother Pablo. They're Spanish-British brothers. And the inspirations and homages are worn clearly on the sleeve. Like, these guys are huge Tarantino and Guy Ritchie fans. Like, there are references galore, sometimes even directly saying, like, yeah, this is, I was thinking of Pulp Fiction. Yeah, we're doing Pulp Fiction right now. And they recreate a lot of, like, the shots, like the low angle pointing upward with like Travolta and Jackson with the guns. And, like, there's a lot of really fun Easter eggs and moments in this, and the characters even say it's like, it's not copying if it's inspiration. Like, they're outright saying, yes, these guys are why we make movies, and we're doing a tribute here while also staking out our own territory, saying we can take these in new directions. The basic story, told out of sequence, non-linear, again, in pure Guy Ritchie Tarantino form, is that there are these two kids, one's a young adult, one's still like 10 years old. They're grandchildren of a very powerful drug lord in London, and they've been kidnapped by rival gangs. And there's these intersecting hitmen that are basically trying to figure out who's doing what, who's betraying who, you know, who do they trust, all this kind of fun stuff. And there's just so much giddy, silly joy in everything they do. The production values are really strong here. AJ North, who has a small role in the film as one of the enforcers, he did all the stunt choreography and all the fight mechanics, and it's really believable. I mean, the violence, the gun stuff, it really does feel like something that would have come more in the late 90s and early 2000s. Hell, you even have one character who speaks completely inaudibly in her dialect. I'm certain as a reference to Brad Pitt and Snatch. It's like it's all there for you to just gobble up and enjoy. But beyond that, this cast does really good work. I mean, you have veteran character actor Clive Russell playing the big bad, this crime lord called the Silver Dragon. You have Maria Critel as a one-eyed assassin. I'm guessing it's a reference to Kill Bill. She has a lot of fun scenes. You have Aaron Cobham and this guy Ray Kaleja, who I think is really the star of the film, stealing every moment as X and Y, the Jules and Vincent of this equation. Just absolutely killing it every single scene with his body language, his physical comedy. It goes all over the place, but you never once doubt the authenticity behind it. And then just for this weird kind of symmetry, there's a character named Martin who's mistakenly called Mort by bullying characters. He's played by Philip Tomlin. He basically bookends the movie, like setting up the premise, like a montage of, again, extreme close-ups on his face while everything unfolds behind him. Again, classic technique here. He's there to basically set up the premise of, what happens when someone is pushed to his limits. I think of Milton from Office Space if he was, a Cockney bloke and much younger. So we see how this montage of him sets up the themes of the proceedings, the tone of everything, and then we don't see him again until the very end and realize that this actually meant something. Like this, I was kind of very pleasantly surprised how crisply this was written. It wasn't just like a Family Guy-esque reference fest, and that's not a knock on Family Guy. I've loved that show for 20 plus years. It's not just there to set up the jokes. There really is a point to this, and it gets across surprisingly well. Like this could stand alongside something that Guy Ritchie or the Russo brothers or others in this kind of subgenre of crime films really could succeed with. So it's like, again, it's this idea of like these filmmakers created a new way to tell stories, and now 30 years later you have the Delario brothers saying, yeah, you are the reason we're in this business, and now we're going to show you what we can do with it. And I was very impressed.
Sounds very cool. It's like it's almost like the opposite of Pratfall, where it's sort of like no production value, and sort of it looked like it was heavily improvisational, and even the camera work is improvisational. Where this looks like, hey, this is what we're doing, kind of thing.
It's a way to rigidly structure a way for everything to happen.
I think they went with the motto or the theme of like human stories.
Yeah, human times,
and that's probably in some sort of reflection, rebellion to the influx of AI. I'm interested to see how these movies will do distribution-wise, and where they'll end up. I mean, it's a shame, but, there's a lot of these movies that don't really get seen in a theater outside of a festival nowadays.
The human element is really emphasized pretty much in all of these films. Forgive Me, Father, it's internalizing and coping with trauma. With the animated films, again, it's a hot dog salesman coming to grips with his lot in life, or nurses dealing with the worst pandemic we've seen in a century, or again, trying to anthropomorphize your food. Tales of Babylon, it's human error. It's the fact that these guys are mostly screw-ups, even though they're contract killers, but they're still undeniably charming. It's like there's always this emphasis on the pure humanity of everything going on. So I was very pleased.
Guys, I'm going to wrap up. Maribeth, you've got some more reviews coming out on the website. Your review for Pratfall will be there. Bill's reviews for this festival will also be on the site. And Bill, you also got stuff coming up on your channel and your site.
Oh, yeah. New episodes of the worst trailer in the world are coming soon, and of course, everything I can see and review on the blog in any way, shape, or form.
Again, that will all be on actuallypaid.com. And what's the YouTube?
YouTube.com/actually_paid.
Fantastic. So, guys, I'm going to wrap up. Thanks so much for doing this. We'll have to do it again. Hopefully, we're going to be at the Tribeca Film Festival. I'm hoping that we get some films to review there as well. We're going to be doing a lot of red carpet stuff, and I just hope I survive the month of June at this point. So, hopefully, see you on the other side. But thanks, guys. Have a great evening. And that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, visit our website, No Rest for the Weekend, podcast.com. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube, youtube.com/getbehindtherabbit. I'd like to thank Maribeth Thueson and William Hammon for joining me, and our sponsor, JMR Rentals. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.